BauVolution, where construction meets innovation.
BauVolution. Let's build the future together.
Okay, so you've all sent us a really interesting set of materials, a ton of stuff actually, focused on, what's coming next in the construction and real estate world. We're talking about that list of 24 tips that so many of you flagged as thought-provoking. And consider this deep dive our way of cutting through all the noise, getting to the core insights that are going to make a real difference for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we went through these 24 points, and there's a lot to unpack there. A lot of it's driven by, well, some pretty huge technological changes, societal shifts, the kind of thing. But we really tried to distill it down to the most potent knowledge,
Yeah.
give you those perspectives that'll help you feel not just informed, but maybe even a little surprised, like, oh,
Right.
I hadn't thought of it that way before.
Exactly. And that's what we're aiming for. That feeling of being genuinely ahead of the curve,
Right.
ready for what's next without feeling overwhelmed. So what are we diving into today? Well, get ready, because we're talking about everything from the whole digital transformation wave. And let's be honest, it's not just a wave anymore. It's the whole ocean and the non-negotiable importance of sustainability now.
Yeah.
To those things that still feel a bit like the future, AI, VR, AR. But we're also going to hit on those essential but often overlooked aspects of personal and professional growth, the stuff that really underpins success in any field, but especially these ones that are changing so rapidly.
For sure. It's not just about the tech. It's about how we adapt and evolve as individuals.
Exactly. Okay, so let's unpack this. And I think a good place to start is with that foundational layer, that bedrock of so much of what we'll discuss,
Yeah.
digital transformation. Tip number 1 jumps right into this.
Yeah, and it kind of gets to the heart of it. It's not just about saying, oh, digital transformation is happening. We're way past that. It's more about really internalizing that this is a fundamental shift. We're talking about reshaping the entire ecosystem of construction and real estate. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in the day-to-day that we forget the sheer scale of it.
Right. It's easy to get lost in the weeds. So when you say reshaping the ecosystem, what does that actually look like on the ground?
I mean, think about it. This impacts every single stage, from that initial spark of an idea for a project, the design phase, all the way to how buildings are managed long term. And then even the services we offer to clients. It's all changing.
And it's not just about adopting the latest gadgets, right?
Yeah.
The tip really emphasizes that this is about ongoing learning, staying on top of advancements in automation, robotics, all that.
Yeah.
It seems like less of a one-time system upgrade and more of a continuous evolution.
Yeah, definitely. For both individuals and companies, it's about fostering a culture of continuous learning and adaptation.
What are some of the biggest shifts you're seeing in how companies are approaching that continuous learning aspect?
Well, I think what's really interesting is the move towards a more democratized approach to learning resources.
Yeah.
It's not just about formal training programs anymore. There's this huge increase in professionals taking advantage of online courses, really specific to their needs. Industry blogs are great too, keeping up with the latest trends. And even participating in open source projects. It's a way to learn by doing, contributing to the community.
So a more self-directed approach to learning, but also that culture of experimentation within companies.
Yeah, that's the winning combination.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the second tip that really jumped out at me is the idea of really grasping sustainability as a guiding principle. And alongside that, a genuine emphasis on social responsibility. This feels like it's gone from being a nice to have to an absolute necessity.
It really has. And it's interesting because when you look at the actual wording of the tip, it encourages engagement, right?
Yeah.
It specifically mentions trade shows like the Green World Tour
Right.
as a way to really immerse yourself in that world.
Right.
But what's really interesting, I think, is the growing focus on verifiable commitment. And this is where certifications come in. It's not enough to just say, oh yeah, we're sustainable.
You got to prove it.
Exactly. You need to show that you meet recognized standards. And the tip actually lists several of them. DGNB, LAUDIT, BREEAM, QNG. These are all become increasingly important, markers of credibility.
Right. And for our listener, these might sound like a bunch of jargon acronyms, but each one of these represents a framework for assessing a building's, environmental and social impact in different ways, right?
Yeah, exactly. Each one has its own specific focus, and, it's worth understanding the nuances between them.
So give us a quick rundown. What are the key differences between, say, DGNB and LAD?
Sure. So DGNB, for instance, they have a really strong focus on the entire life cycle of a building from the very beginning to the end. while lid, they really emphasize energy efficiency and the quality of the indoor environment.
Okay, that makes sense. What about BREEAM in QNG?
So BREEAM is kind of like a really broad standard covering a bunch of different categories related to sustainability. Things like energy, water, materials, waste, pollution, and even like the impact on the surrounding environment. And QNG is a German certification system that's really focused on health and well-being. Making sure that the buildings are good for the people who live and work in them.
Okay, so knowing these nuances, it really arms you, right? It gives you that knowledge to make more informed decisions about, well, basically everything from the materials you use to the overall design of a project.
Definitely. And it can even influence like the marketing and branding of a project because consumers are becoming more and more savvy about these certifications.
Okay, tip number 3 takes us into the world of building information modeling, or BIM, as it's more commonly known. And I think we've all heard about the potential of BIM for years now. It's been like the buzzword du jour for quite some time. But this tip really emphasizes like leveraging it for efficient planning and collaboration. So where are we with BIM adoption? Like, are companies truly maximizing its use? What are some of the bottlenecks you still see?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is still interoperability. You've got all these different software systems being used by different stakeholders, and they don't always talk to each other seamlessly.
Right, so it's like trying to fit puzzle pieces from different puzzles together.
Exactly. And that can really hinder true collaboration, that smooth flow of information. And I think that's why the tips suggestion to look into online seminars from, like DIN Booth, is so valuable. They often really dive into these very practical implementation challenges, how to actually make BIM work in the real world.
And the tip touches on some like really fascinating extensions of BIM as well. Things like BIM to field and field to BIM, that kind of two-way flow of information between the digital model and the actual construction site.
Yeah, it's like bridging the gap between the virtual and the physical.
And then there's the whole concept of the digital twin, which, I mean, that sounds straight out of science fiction. For our listener, what's the immediate value proposition of these more advanced applications of BIM?
Okay, so imagine this. You're on a construction site, right? And as work is being done, you've got real-time progress tracking that's directly updating the BIM model. So you can immediately spot any potential issues, clashes between different trades, things like that. And that means faster decision-making on-site, which can save a ton of time and money. That's BIM to field in action.
It's like having X-ray vision into the construction process.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, you've got field to BIM, which is all about capturing like as-built data from the site and feeding it back into the model. So you end up with this incredibly detailed digital replica of the building, a digital twin.
Okay, so it's not just a static model anymore. It's a living, breathing thing that evolves over time.
Exactly. And that digital twin becomes an invaluable tool for like ongoing facility management. You can use it for predictive maintenance, so you know when things are likely to break down before they actually do. And even for future renovations, you've got this complete up-to-date record of the building at your fingertips.
Wow, that's powerful stuff. Okay, tip number 4 is where things start to feel like we're stepping into the future a little bit. We're talking about experimenting with AI-powered tools. And I think for a lot of people, AI still feels like this huge abstract concept. But this tip encourages, like getting your hands dirty, playing around with some surprisingly accessible examples, and looking at this list, ChatGPT, Google Bard Gemini, Jasper AI. I mean, these are becoming almost household names at this point, and they're mostly associated with content creation. But what are some of the specific applications you're seeing emerge in construction and real estate where these language models are providing real value?
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with content creation. We're seeing them being used to draft initial project briefs, generate marketing copy, stuff like that. But it goes beyond that. Think about analyzing huge data sets of regulations and building codes. These AI tools can do that in a fraction of the time it would take a human. And even things like customer service inquiries, providing instant answers to common questions. It's like having a super efficient research and writing assistant at your disposal.
That's amazing. And the list goes even further than that, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've got Grammarly, which everyone knows, for like polishing your writing. But then you got things like DALL-E 3, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, Easy Diffusion. These are all AI tools for generating images. Imagine the possibilities for like visualizing design concepts.
Oh, wow. Or creating photorealistic mock-ups for marketing materials.
Exactly. And then, for presentations, there's Beautiful.ai. Gene.ai for research summarization, DeepL for instant translation, which is huge in our increasingly globalized industry, and Fireflies.ai for like automatically transcribing and summarizing meetings. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
It really does. So for our listener, I mean, where do you even begin with all this? What would you recommend they focus on to see the most immediate impact?
Well, I think it's really about identifying a specific pain point in your workflow. Like if you're spending hours drafting reports, try using a tool like Jasper AI or ChatGPT to generate a first draft and see how much time it saves you. If communication with international partners is a struggle, experiment with DeepL. The key is to start small, find a practical application, and dedicate some time to experimenting with the relevant tool.
So it's about starting with a problem you're trying to solve, not just jumping on the AI bandwagon for the sake of it.
Exactly. And the tip also emphasizes that it's not just about using these tools, it's about understanding the underlying technology and its implications. Reading books, blogs, attending webinars, that kind of deeper knowledge is crucial.
Which leads perfectly into tip number 5, understanding the legal aspects of AI. And this is something that, we absolutely can't ignore. As we start integrating these incredibly powerful tools into our workflows, we need to be mindful of the legal and regulatory landscape that's emerging around them. And the tip specifically mentions data protection, copyright, and liability as key areas of concern. What are some of the trickier legal areas that our listeners should be particularly aware of?
Well, data privacy is definitely a big one. I mean, if you're using AI to analyze customer data, you absolutely need to make sure you're complying with regulations like GDPR or CCPA, and those can be pretty complex.
Right, there are serious consequences for getting that wrong.
Absolutely. And then, copyright is another one that's really interesting. Like, who owns the output generated by AI? Is it the user, the AI developer? The law is still catching up on this one. And then liability is probably the most nascent area, I guess you could say. Like, if an AI-powered system makes a flawed design recommendation, and that leads to, structural issues in a building, who's ultimately responsible?
That's a really good question. And I think it highlights that, responsible innovation isn't just about adopting the latest tech. It's about understanding the broader implications and making sure we're operating within, legal and ethical boundaries.
Yeah, for sure. Being proactive about these legal frameworks can save you a lot of headaches down the line. And it also helps to build trust in the use of AI within the industry.
Okay, tip number 6 transports us into the realm of immersive experiences. Experimenting with virtual reality and augmented reality. And VR and AR, they still feel a bit like stepping into a sci-fi movie for a lot of people. But beyond those flashy demos, what are some of the real-world applications you're seeing gain traction in construction and real estate?
Well, visualization is still huge, being able to walk a client through a space before it's even built. But we're also seeing some really interesting advancements in how VR and AR are being used on site. Like, imagine having AR overlays that provide workers with real-time instructions and schematics right in their field of vision. Or using VR for safety training in high-risk environments. You can simulate dangerous scenarios without actually putting anyone at risk.
That's so smart. And the tip actually gives some examples of consumer apps that most people would be familiar with. The IKEA app for visualizing furniture in your home, Wana for trying on clothes virtually. These are all using the same underlying technology.
Right. And it helps to demystify it a bit. Like, this isn't just futuristic stuff. It's already here in our pockets.
And there's Vertlo for navigation, InkHunter for visualizing tattoos, though it does mention that it's only available on Android for now, and Starwalk 2 for astronomy buffs. So for our listener who's maybe thinking, okay, this is all very cool, but how does this apply to my work? What are some low barrier ways they could start exploring the potential of VR and AR in their day-to-day?
I think a good place to start is with communication and collaboration. Like, could you use VR for virtual site walkthroughs with stakeholders who can't be there in person? Or could AR enhance on-site inspections by, providing instant access to building information? There are some really affordable VR headsets out there now, and a lot of AR apps are free or very low cost.
So you can experiment without breaking the bank.
Exactly. And the key is to, again, start with a specific workflow, a specific problem you're trying to solve, and see if VR or AR can offer a tangible benefit.
Okay, tip number 7 shifts our focus to the interconnected world of the Internet of Things, or IoT. And it seems like every object imaginable is becoming smart these days, communicating with other objects, gathering data. It's kind of mind-boggling. But beyond, the obvious applications like smart thermostats and security systems, What are some of the less obvious ways that IoT is starting to impact construction and real estate?
Oh, there's so many cool examples. I mean, think about sensors embedded in concrete that monitor curing times and structural integrity, or sensors on heavy machinery that provide real-time data on performance and maintenance needs. We're talking about a level of granularity that was unimaginable just a few years ago.
So it's really about moving from reactive to proactive, knowing about potential problems before they even arise.
Exactly. And the tip lists a whole range of sensor types.
Yep.
Temperature, humidity, proximity, acceleration, PIR, vibration, even water quality and image sensors. I mean, the diversity of data we can collect now is incredible.
So for our listener, this means they have the potential to gather incredibly granular data about their projects and properties, which in theory should lead to more efficient operations, predictive maintenance, all that good stuff. But what are some of the challenges in implementing these interconnected systems effectively?
Well, I think data management is a big one. With so many devices collecting information, you need really robust systems for storing, processing, and protecting all that data. And security, of course, is paramount.
Right, because the more interconnected things become, the more vulnerable they are to attack.
Exactly. And then there's also the issue of interoperability, making sure that all these different devices and platforms can actually talk to each other seamlessly. Because the real value of IoT comes from that integration, that ability to see the big picture.
Okay, so it's not just about the individual devices, it's about the ecosystem as a whole.
Right.
Now, tip number 8 builds directly on this, and it's about the potential of smart building technologies. And I think it's easy to think of this as taking the smart home concept and just scaling it up. But what are some of the key differences and added complexities when we move from a smart home to a smart commercial building?
Well, I mean, scale is definitely a major factor. In a commercial building, you're dealing with a much larger number of systems. HVAC, lighting, security, access control, fire safety. It's a lot more complex. And then you've got a much wider range of stakeholders to consider: tenants, facility managers, security personnel, building owners. It's a lot more to juggle.
So the coordination and integration become much more challenging.
Yeah, for sure. And the tip actually suggests really diving into this through specialist books and webinars. Getting a deep understanding of the technology and even experimenting on a smaller scale, maybe in your own home or office, to kind of grasp the fundamentals before going all in on a large commercial project.
It's like building your smart building muscles before you tackle the marathon.
Exactly. And the ultimate goal is to create this truly intelligent ecosystem where all these different building systems are working together seamlessly to optimize everything. Energy efficiency, occupant comfort, overall building performance.
And I imagine the data generated by these smart building systems becomes absolutely crucial for making informed decisions about all of that.
Oh, absolutely. You can get insights into energy consumption patterns, space utilization, potential maintenance issues. It allows you to be proactive, anticipate problems, and potentially save a ton of money in the long run.
So data is king, even in the world of smart buildings.
More than ever.
Tip number 9 brings a really important, and maybe even a bit sobering, layer to all this digital integration that we've been talking about: cybersecurity. As we become more and more reliant on interconnected systems, vast amounts of data flowing back and forth, protecting that digital realm becomes absolutely non-negotiable. And with all the interconnectedness we've been discussing, BIM, AI, IoT, smart buildings, it seems like the attack surface just keeps expanding. What are some of the specific cybersecurity vulnerabilities that our listener in construction or real estate should be most concerned about?
Well, I think one of the biggest risks is that these integrated systems create multiple potential entry points for attackers. A vulnerability in an IoT sensor could potentially give someone access to the entire building automation system. And then there's the risk of data breaches, sensitive design data, financial information, even tenant data. It's all at risk.
And the tip mentions a 2018 article on data security in BIM, which I think highlights that this isn't a new concern, but as these technologies become more sophisticated and interconnected, the stakes just keep getting higher.
Definitely. And I think one of the challenges is that cybersecurity is often seen as an IT issue, something that's separate from the core business of construction and real estate. But it really needs to be integrated into every aspect of the design, construction, and operation of buildings.
So it's not just about having the latest firewalls and antivirus software. It's about having a culture of security awareness throughout the entire organization.
Exactly. And that involves things like implementing strong password policies, regularly updating software, providing cybersecurity training for all employees, and considering professional cybersecurity audits to identify vulnerabilities.
Okay, so tip number 10 shifts our focus to the power of data analysis. It's about moving beyond gut feelings and intuition and making truly informed decisions based on, hard data. But with all the data being generated by these technologies we've been talking about, it can feel overwhelming. How can our listeners start to make sense of it all? What are the first steps?
Well, I think the key is to start by asking the right questions. What are your key performance indicators? Where are your inefficiencies? What are you trying to achieve? Once you know what you're looking for, you can start to identify the relevant data sources and use data analysis tools to uncover insights.
And the tip mentions the link between data analysis and AI.
Yeah, AI is becoming incredibly powerful for pattern recognition and predictive analytics. So you can use AI tools to identify trends and anomalies in your data that you might not otherwise notice. And that can be really valuable for things like predictive maintenance, anticipating problems before they occur.
Okay, so it's not just about collecting data, it's about having the tools and the skills to extract meaningful intelligence from it. And the tip provides a pretty comprehensive list of data analysis tools.
It does. You've got Alteryx, AWS SageMaker, H2O AI Cloud, IBM SPSS, RapidMiner, TIBCO. These are all powerful platforms with a range of capabilities. But for someone who's just starting out with data analysis, I would recommend starting small. Identify a relatively simple data set within your business, maybe project costs or energy consumption, and explore some basic data visualization tools like Excel or Tableau.
So dip your toes in the water before diving into the deep end.
Exactly. The goal is to develop a data-driven mindset and gradually build your analytical skills.
Okay, so tip number 11 takes us to the skies with the use of drones and remote inspections for project monitoring. And this is one area where, the technology has advanced so rapidly in recent years. It's really transforming how we oversee construction sites. What are some of the key advancements that have made drone technology so practical for this application?
Well, I think improvements in battery life have been huge. Drones can now stay in the air for much longer, which means they can cover more ground and gather more data. Camera technology has also come a long way, so the imagery you get is incredibly detailed. And then you've got advancements in autonomous flight capabilities. So drones can be programmed to follow predetermined flight paths, which makes data collection much more efficient and consistent.
So you don't need to be an expert pilot to operate these things anymore.
Right. But as the tip points out, it's not just about the drone itself. You need a whole ecosystem of supporting technology. An intuitive user interface for controlling the drone and accessing the data, reliable mobile video streaming, even in low bandwidth environments, the potential for AR overlays, which can provide context to the imagery, live location tracking so you know where the drone is at all times, and robust data storage and reporting tools.
Wow, it's a whole package.
It is. And one of the most exciting developments is the integration of AI for analyzing the captured imagery. AI can automatically identify defects or track progress, which saves a huge amount of time and effort.
So you're not just collecting data, you're actually extracting actionable insights from it.
Exactly. And the tip also suggests considering partnerships, collaborating with specialized drone service providers or software companies that focus on data analytics for aerial imagery.
Right, because building that expertise in-house can be a pretty steep learning curve.
It can be. So partnering with experts can be a smart move, especially initially.
Okay, tip number 12 delves into the world of blockchain technology. And I think for a lot of people, blockchain is still synonymous with cryptocurrencies, but its potential applications in construction and real estate seem vast. So beyond Bitcoin and Ethereum, what are some of the most promising use cases you're seeing emerge?
Well, the tip specifically mentions smart contracts, and I think that's a really exciting area. Imagine contracts that automatically execute and release payments upon the completion of predefined milestones.
So it's all automated and transparent.
Exactly. It increases trust and reduces the potential for disputes. And then, beyond smart contracts, blockchain's secure and transparent ledger system could revolutionize land registry, making it much more efficient and secure. And supply chain management for materials. You could track the provenance of materials from their origin all the way to the construction site, ensuring authenticity and sustainability. And even the transfer of property ownership could be streamlined and made more secure using blockchain.
Wow, it sounds like it has the potential to touch almost every aspect of the industry.
It really does. And for those who want to dive deeper, the tip actually lists some really great resources for learning about blockchain. Ethereum test networks, crypto zombies, blockchain demo, Truffle Suite.
So it's about creating a more secure, transparent, and efficient way of managing transactions and information. For our listener, where might they see the earliest practical applications of blockchain impacting their work?
Well, I think supply chain tracking for critical materials is one area where blockchain's transparency and immutability can offer immediate benefits, making sure you're getting what you paid for, that materials are ethically sourced, that kind of thing. And smart contracts for streamlining payment processes on large projects, that's another area where we could see adoption fairly quickly.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not just a theoretical concept, it's actually starting to have real-world impact.
Definitely. And I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with blockchain.
Okay, tip number 13 brings us back to the crucial topic of minimizing our environmental impact. And it emphasizes that this isn't just about professional projects, it's about making conscious decisions in our personal lives as well. So why is this personal commitment so important?
Well, I think it comes down to leading by example. When individuals within the industry demonstrate a personal commitment to sustainability by reducing their own carbon footprint, for instance, it creates a ripple effect. It fosters greater awareness and acceptance of sustainable practices in their professional spheres. It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Right, because actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. And the tip suggests some specific actions that individuals can take. Reducing flying, using public transportation or biking whenever possible, investing in energy-efficient appliances, being more conscious about consumption habits. It all adds up.
And it mentions a resource for understanding your personal impact, the Ecological Footprint tool on the WWF Germany website.
Yeah, that's a great tool for getting a sense of your own impact and identifying areas where you can make changes.
So it's a reminder that sustainability isn't just a corporate initiative. It's a collective responsibility that starts with individual choices.
Absolutely. And those personal values can translate into more innovative and impactful sustainable solutions within the industry.
Okay, tip number 14 highlights the importance of understanding demographic developments, particularly the needs of an aging population. And this is something that, it's going to have a huge impact on the future of construction and real estate. How should this awareness shape the way we design and build in the years to come?
Well, the tip emphasizes the need to understand diversity within the population. And that includes recognizing the specific needs of older adults in terms of accessibility, safety, and comfort. So we need to be thinking about things like wider doorways, non-slip flooring, grab bars and bathrooms, that kind of thing.
So designing spaces that are adaptable to changing needs.
Exactly. And applying universal design principles, which aim to create spaces that are usable by people of all ages and abilities. It's not just about accommodating older adults, it's about creating environments that are inclusive for everyone. And using population statistics and staying informed about these demographic shifts will be crucial for developing relevant housing and infrastructure.
So it's about designing and building spaces that are not only functional today, but also adaptable to the evolving needs of society in the future.
Exactly. And this demographic awareness can also unlock new market opportunities in areas like senior living and intergenerational communities.
Okay, tip number 15 encourages us to broaden our horizons and adopt a global perspective. Appreciating different cultures within the construction and real estate industries. And in an increasingly interconnected world, this seems more important than ever. So why is this cultural understanding so vital?
Well, in a globalized industry, you're more and more likely to be working with international partners, clients, suppliers. And understanding different cultural norms, communication styles, and business practices can make a huge difference in the success of those collaborations.
Right, because what might be considered polite or professional in one culture could be completely different in another.
Exactly. And misunderstandings can lead to delays, cost overruns, and even project failures. The tip suggests several ways to stay informed. Reading international journals, engaging with online platforms, attending intercultural workshops, even learning a new language.
It's about going beyond just understanding different building codes and regulations. It's about developing genuine cross-cultural competence.
Precisely. And that can be a significant competitive advantage in the global marketplace.
Okay, tip number 16 gets down to a fundamental human skill. Understanding the needs and problems of others through active listening. And in a field like construction and real estate, which can be very technical and detail-oriented, it's easy to overlook the importance of these soft skills. Why is active listening so crucial in this industry?
Well, because at the end of the day, construction and real estate are all about people. You're constantly interacting with clients, contractors, colleagues, community members, and truly understanding their needs, their concerns, their perspectives. It's essential for building trust, managing expectations, and ultimately achieving successful outcomes.
It's about putting yourself in the other person's shoes, trying to see the world from their point of view.
Exactly. And that involves paying attention to both what people are saying and what they're not saying, picking up on those nonverbal cues. The tip also mentions the 6 hats thinking method by De Bono, which is a great tool for consciously considering different perspectives.
So it's about stepping outside of your own assumptions and biases and really trying to understand the other person's point of view.
Yeah, and taking feedback seriously. Not just brushing it off, but really listening to what people are telling you and using that feedback to improve your work.
It's a reminder that behind every project, there are people with specific needs and aspirations. And active listening seems like a key to unlocking successful and fulfilling collaborations.
Absolutely. By truly hearing and understanding others, we can develop solutions that are more tailored, more effective, and ultimately more valuable.
Okay. Tip number 17 encourages us to break down those traditional silos and embrace transdisciplinary collaboration, working with professionals from a diverse range of fields. And this is something that we're seeing more and more of these days. What are some of the more surprising collaborations you've seen that have led to really innovative outcomes?
Well, the tip lists architects, engineers, IT specialists, lawyers, sociologists, even medical professionals. And I think that's a great reflection of how broad this is becoming. I recently came across a project where architects were collaborating with neuroscientists to design spaces that optimize cognitive function and well-being.
Wow, that's fascinating. So it's not just about aesthetics anymore. It's about how the built environment impacts our brains.
Exactly. And another project I saw involved sociologists working with urban planners to create more inclusive and community-oriented developments. So it's about bringing all these different perspectives to the table to create something that's truly holistic.
So it's about moving beyond our own disciplinary echo chambers and recognizing that the most innovative solutions often lie at the intersection of different fields.
Exactly. And that requires a certain mindset, an openness to learning from others, a willingness to challenge your own assumptions, and techniques like brainstorming and design thinking can be really helpful for fostering those unconventional solutions.
Okay, tip number 18 addresses the critical need to stay flexible, agile, and resilient, especially in the wake of global disruptions like the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think we all learned some hard lessons about adaptability over the past few years. So what are some key strategies for cultivating this adaptability, both in individuals and in organizations?
Well, the tip highlights the ability to adapt to new technologies, market conditions, and project challenges. And I think for individuals, this involves a certain mindset, a growth mindset, a willingness to learn new skills, and the ability to embrace change.
Right, because if the past few years have taught us anything, it's that change is the only constant.
Exactly. And the tip also emphasizes the importance of stress management strategies, which is something that a lot of people overlook. Having a structured schedule, getting enough sleep, taking breaks, practicing relaxation techniques, exercising regularly, eating a balanced diet. These are all essential for maintaining your resilience in the face of stress and uncertainty.
So it's about taking care of yourself both physically and mentally so you can be at your best when challenges arise.
Absolutely. And for organizations, fostering adaptability means creating a culture of innovation, empowering employees to experiment and take risks, and having processes in place to pivot.
Okay, tip number 19 is about remote work. Even though a lot of people are going back to the office, it seems like remote work is here to stay.
It is. And it's not just about having the right technology. It's about adapting your mindset and your skills.
What are some of the biggest lessons we've learned about remote work over the past few years?
Well, communication is key. You have to be super clear and concise when you're not face-to-face. Setting clear expectations is important too. And you got to find ways to stay connected as a team, even when you're physically apart.
So it's about being intentional about how you communicate and how you build relationships.
Exactly. And there are tons of tools out there that can help, video conferencing, project management platforms, cloud services. But it's not just about the tools. It's about using them effectively.
It's about adapting to a new way of working. Okay, tip number 20 is about networking. This one's always relevant, right?
Always. And it's not just about collecting business cards at conferences anymore.
So how do you network in today's world?
Well, in-person events are still important. The tip mentions real estate and construction fairs, things like that. But you also have to leverage digital networks like LinkedIn, Sing, even Twitter.
So it's about being active online, building your professional presence.
Right. And it's not just about broadcasting yourself. It's about engaging with others, sharing knowledge, being part of the conversation.
So it's about building genuine relationships, even if they start online.
Exactly. Networking is about more than just getting your next job. It's about building a community, a support system.
Okay, tip number 21 is about connecting with tech startups. This one seems a little counterintuitive. Like, why would established companies want to work with these young upstarts?
Because startups are often the ones driving innovation. They're not afraid to take risks, to try new things.
So it's about tapping into their energy and creativity.
Exactly. The tip suggests attending tech events, innovation forums, even startup fairs. There are some good ones out there, like the startup areas at BAU, tech in construction, and digital BAU.
So it's about getting out there and seeing what's new.
Right. And it's not just about observing. It's about engaging, building relationships. The tip mentions Bredick as an example. They're a startup that specializes in automated construction site monitoring.
So they're using AI and sensors to keep tabs on everything that's happening on a job site.
Exactly. And that's just one example. There are startups doing incredible things in every aspect of the industry.
So it's about staying ahead of the curve, seeing what's coming next.
Right. And for established companies, collaborating with startups can be a way to inject some of that innovation into their own operations.
It's a win-win. Okay, tip number 22 is a big one, especially in our industry. It's about work-life balance.
Yeah, it's a constant struggle, right? Construction and real estate are demanding fields. Long hours, tight deadlines. It's easy to get burned out.
So how do you find that balance?
Well, the tip suggests some practical things. Prioritize your tasks, set realistic goals, delegate when you can.
So it's about being organized, efficient with your time.
Exactly. And the tip also talks about workplace health promotion. Things like ergonomic furniture, fitness options, all of that can make a difference.
So it's not just about working smarter. It's about taking care of yourself physically.
Right. And then there's the mental and emotional side. Setting boundaries between work and personal time, pursuing hobbies, making sure you're getting enough sleep.
It's about prioritizing your well-being.
Exactly. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't do your best work. Tip 23, carve out time for personal professional development. Courses, webinars, mentors.
Lifelong learning. The field changes so fast you have to keep growing your skills and knowledge. It's an investment in yourself.
And finally, tip 24, keep that spirit of innovation alive. Dedicate time for creative thinking, a distraction diet.
Huh, I like that. Yeah, innovation doesn't just happen between meetings. You need to consciously make space for it. Step away from the usual routine, explore different fields, stay curious.
Try new things, break the pattern.
Exactly. That's how you get fresh ideas.
So that's our run through the 24 tips. A lot packed in there. The big message seems to be, change is constant, be ready to adapt and learn.
Absolutely. Adaptability and continuous learning are the threads running through almost all of these points. These tips offer a kind of roadmap, really.
Touching on tech, sustainability, skills, it's all interconnected.
Yeah, it's a framework for thinking about the future. Use it as inspiration, guidance for figuring out how to stay ahead.
Okay, so to leave our listeners with something to chew on, here's a thought. Looking at all these areas, digital, sustainability, new tech, skills, which one feels like it could have the biggest impact, maybe the biggest disruption on your specific corner of the construction or real estate world?
That's a good question to ponder. Which one presents the most immediate opportunity or maybe the biggest challenge for you?
And then the follow-up. What's one small concrete thing you could do this week? Just one small step to start exploring that area a bit more.
Yeah, don't try to tackle everything. Just pick one thing and take that first exploratory step. Future-proof yourself, one small action at a time. All right, well, that's a wrap for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll catch you next time.
This was BauVolution.
Where construction meets innovation. Until next time, keep building the future.